Hello, this is Stephanie Wilmot, and this is another episode of Legally Reverend here. And today we're going to talk about Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, which talks about some of the powers that are conferred on the government. If you thought that the PowerPoint in my last video left much to be desired, you have not seen anything yet. This only has 2 slides, but it is now 11:02 and I'm tired. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get our business done. We're just going to talk about Article 1, Section 8, and we're going to keep it moving. Sometimes it is going to be like that when you are self-studying the law. Sometimes you just have to get it done. And today we're just going to get it done. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this Article 1, Section 8. Before we do, let us thank our sponsors. We want to take a moment to thank Bar Exam Drills. Bar Exam Drills has over 2,000 real previously used MBE bar exam questions, and I'm using the site and I love it. It is an app on my phone. I can do MBE questions when I'm riding in the car as a passenger. When I wake up in the morning, I can do a few questions. Before I can go to bed at night, I can do a few questions. And so it's just so convenient to have the bar exam questions right there on your phone. Highly recommend the site. It is actually pretty affordable when it comes to compared to many of the other bar exam programs. I am using this to try to pass the bar exam without going to law school. Also wanted to thank Marchica Law Firm. They are my supervising office and they are supporting me on this journey to becoming a lawyer without going to law school. So just want to take a moment and thank the people who are making this possible for me. And then let's get to it with Article 1, Section 8. So get that laundry done. Article 1, Section 8 is the source of many of the most important powers. It is essentially a laundry list of powers delegated to Congress. That's what it is. So what are some of these powers? So I really like this website, Constitutional Law Reporter, kind of breaks it down for us. So the federal government in general and the Congress in particular is only in possession of the powers delegated to it. See the 10th Amendment. Okay, we need to do a video on that. Meaning if Congress makes a law, not only may it not conflict with some limitation on Congress power, not being a discriminatory law, for example, it must also emanate from some provision in the Constitution that gives Congress its ability to make this sort of law. The textual powers given to Congress can be found throughout the Constitution, but this section, Article 1, Section 8, is the source of many of the most important powers. It is essentially a laundry list of powers delegated to Congress. These enumerated powers, as they are known, range from the particular. Congress can regulate the value of coins. Speaking of which, did you realize that it costs more money to make a penny than it's worth? Many people are advocating for getting rid of the penny. Anyway, moving on. These enumerated powers, they are known range from the particular. Congress can regulate the value of coins to the sweeping. Congress can tax and have been the sources of much contention in public consciousness and in the halls of the Supreme Court. One of the most broadly interpreted and controversial powers emanates from what is known as the Commerce Clause. Okay, yeah, there were quite a few questions about the Commerce Clause. This power gives Congress the ability to regulate commerce among several states, whatever this may mean. The lines delineating what is and what is not commerce has been in flux since the ratification of the Constitution itself. Moreover, a cousin to the Commerce Clause is the so-called dormant Commerce Clause, which is an implied limitation on the states which precludes them from acting in a protectionist manner against the interests of interstate commerce. Another especially broad and off-cited power comes from the taxing and spending clause. Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the country using the money it has collected. But the contours and limitations of this power are hotly debated, especially in the modern era. Underlying each of these powers is what is known as necessary and proper clause, which allows Congress to do whatever else is necessary and proper to carry out its other responsibilities. Let's look here at the dormant commerce clause. The Commerce Clause gives the federal government the authority to regulate commerce among several states. See the Commerce Clause for what this entails. States, however, are not bound by the enumerated powers of the Constitution. They have what are called plenary powers. Essentially, they can do whatever they wish, provided those actions don't conflict with some negative prohibition in the US Constitution. Either way, however, states don't need to be affirmatively granted power by constitutional provision like the federal government. However, once the federal government is granted a certain power, that power is theoretically concurrent. Meaning, for example, with the Commerce Clause in place, both the federal government and the state governments have authority in the realm of commerce. The question becomes then, to which degree does the Commerce Clause actually limit states' ability to regulate commerce? The answer, among other provisions like the Supremacy Clause and the Privileges and Immunities Clause, is what is known as the Dormant Commerce Clause. The Dormant Commerce Clause does not explicitly stem from any textual provision. It is entirely implied from the Commerce Clause. One of the underlying purposes of the Commerce Clause is to allow the federal government to prevent economic discrimination between states. Selling goods between Alabama and Mississippi should not be as difficult as selling goods between the United States and Russia. While somewhat sovereign, a state should not be permitted to pass laws benefiting itself that also burden another state. The Commerce Clause allows laws passed by the federal government to override state laws that affect interstate commerce. The Dormant Commerce Clause automatically invalidates a protectionist state law, whether or not the federal government has legislated on the issue. So, if a state makes a law that is protectionist, then the Dormant Commerce Clause automatically invalidates that law, even if the federal government hasn't legislated on the issue. Okay, so loving that. Let's just go back here. The taxing and spending clause. Okay. Though parts of the federal government's power to tax and use of money made from taxes can be found in different provisions throughout the Constitution, it is this provision in Article 1, Section 8 that is the heart of this ability. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, impose, and exercises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposed, and exercises shall be uniform throughout the United States. In the early part of the 20th century, this clause was used by the court to narrow Congress' ability to tax and spend. In efforts to affect changes in state policy and state law, the federal government attempted to use the stick of taxes and the carrot of spending to incentivize states to comply with some federal programs. For example, Congress wanted to regulate child labor laws, but as far as the Constitution is concerned, no provision authorizes Congress to regulate in this area. As a governmental body of limited enumerated powers, Congress could theoretically not make laws to affect such change. It is the state's prerogative whether or not to regulate in an area where Congress does not have authority. However, in 1919, Congress passed a law attempting to use its taxing and spending powers to incentivize changes in state child labor laws. The law imposed a tax on profits of a company that employed children. But in Bailey v. Drexel Furniture Company, the Supreme Court held this law to be unconstitutional. Congress was prohibited from using its taxing and spending powers to essentially work around a limitation on this authority. So they cannot use the taxing and spending clause to pigeonhole people into doing what they want them to do. Necessary and proper clause. Okay, officer thereof. In other words, Congress is also given the authority to act to further any of its express powers, even if the particular action isn't expressly delineated. Thus, the clause theoretically authorized implied powers, provided that the actions Congress takes can be generally grounded in some other constitutional provision. While this clause is written into the text of the Constitution, it was expounded on by the Supreme Court in McCulloch v. Maryland, 1819, which is still today considered to be of extreme importance in understanding the meaning of necessary and proper clause. In McCullough, the court dealt with the federal government's establishment of a national bank. The state of Maryland sued the government, alleging that because the Constitution did not expressly grant Congress the authority to set up a bank, it did not have such an ability. Therefore, argued Maryland, the bank was not constitutional. The court, however, disagreed. It looked at the necessary and proper clause to assert that Congress' authority is not limited to the express provisions. There was some flexibility in the text, argued Chief Justice Marshall, writing for the court. It is here that the Chief Justice wrote the words that are still regularly cited in court cases and academic treatises alike. In considering this question, then, we must never forget that it is a constitution we are expounding. More technically, the court held, although the necessary and proper clause could be read narrowly, only authorizing whatever is absolutely necessary to uphold the other provisions of the Constitution, the court interpreted the clause broadly, provided Congress goal could legitimately be said to relate to some express provision. The necessary and proper clause permitted action to achieve that goal. The court considered the establishment of a bank as a legitimately relating to Congress' express authority to tax and regulate commerce. Okay, and then we have additional enumerated powers. The Congress only possesses the powers given to it by the Constitution. Many of these powers are found in the clauses of Article 1, Section 8, but while some of these provisions, like the Commerce Clause and the Taxing and Spending Clause, are the source of tremendous amounts of legislation, litigation, and academic debate, some of the Section 8 provisions get much disattention. Below are brief descriptions of just a few of these provisions, but even this list is incomplete. Some of Congress' powers, like its ability to regulate the weight of coins, are just not the subjects of much notable constitutional discussion. So we have the national debt. One of the most hotly contested political issues today is that of the U.S. national debt. This is the total amount of money the federal government owes to individuals in other countries. The national debt is created by the national deficit, the annual amount of money that is the difference between the income the government takes in, for example, through taxes, and the money the government spends, for example, through Medicare. The copyright clause, declarations of war, authority over Washington, D.C., other powers. There are still many other enumerated powers listed in Article 1, Section 8 that have not been dealt with here. They include the ability to regulate immigration, bankruptcies, coins, post offices, international law, and the structure of the Army and Navy. To be sure, so many of these powers are crucial for the government to function properly. Maybe part of the reason why they are so rarely dealt with in a constitutional setting is because, unlike some others, they function efficiently and without controversy. All right, so now we are at the end of Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Legally Not Read, Legally Read here. Once again, we want to thank our sponsors, Bar Exam Drills, great app for your phone that will help you get ready for the bar exam. We know that it just passed in July, but February is going to be here before you know it. So go to the App Store and download the app. In addition to that, we want to thank Marchica Law Firm for being our supervising law firm, helping us on this journey of learning it like Lincoln, becoming a lawyer without going to law school. All right, thank you so much. Have a great night.